Welcome aboard Rocket Ship, the platform with the most relevant content for competitive examinations. This is Rocket Ship IAS Lab and continuing with our series on answer writing for general studies papers of civil services main examination. We take up a question that you might come across in GS paper 3. Here goes the question. Make reasoned arguments as to what kind of industries are most suitable for the northern plain and the hinterland peninsula area. So basically this is a straightforward question. However, you are supposed to use your, you could say, thinking faculty, because the question requires you to think about a problem, the problem being industrializing the hinterland. As you would probably know, hinterland is the region that is away from the coast. Basically it is the landlocked part of a country. In India's case it is the northern plain as well as some parts of the peninsula area that is considered the hinterland of India. As the question itself requires you to talk about what kind of industries would be suitable for industrializing the hinterland, but the question requires you to make reason argument. Basically what you are supposed to do when you make some argument, you have to give a convincing reason why you are suggesting this particular kind of industry. Basically that is what you are supposed to do. We are introducing our answer with going into the problem of industrializing the hinterland, which is actually a universal problem. Long-term empirical evidence bears out that the hinterland away from the coast and seaports faces substantial development challenges. What are these development challenges? These challenges, mostly economic challenges, these challenges emanate from lack of integration in global supply chains, higher logistic costs, etc. You can understand very well that the coastal region, especially the region around ports, it would be well integrated in the global supply chain, but that's not the case with the hinterland. Moreover, generally the cost of moving goods from the ports to the hinterland is high. That means the hinterland suffer from high logistic costs, and that means the industries would be less, you could say, less willing to set shops in the hinterland. All of this manifests in challenges to setting up industrial ventures, and large enterprises generally give a miss to hinterland, as has been observed in the northern plain and peninsula area. This means states like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh and Vidarbha region in Maharashtra, etc., and in fact parts of Rajasthan and Assam, parts of West Bengal, etc. too, are not industrialized to the same extent as the coastal region in area. You are almost certainly aware that in India's case there is clear divide in industrialization, you could say, rate in the hinterland, between the hinterland and the coastal region. Yet the hinterland has its advantages that can help it attract certain kind of industries. So the question arises, what kind of industries are most suitable for the hinterland? Taking them one by one. First is agro industries. You can understand very well that the hinterland, the northern plain and in fact parts of peninsular area, they have quite some developed agricultural base, they have quite some farming base. That means they can attract industries whose primary raw material is agricultural produce. That would include food processing. Moreover, this is an actually a new category of industry which is coming up. It is called oleochemicals. Oleochemicals are chemicals which are derived from, you could say, plant sources, mostly from plant oils. Anyway, then come biofuels, including biodiesel and bioethanol. You are almost certainly aware that India is emphasizing on, you could say, increasing biofuel production, mostly for energy security and for, in fact, for environmental, for it being environment friendly as well. And among the biofuels, we can name biodiesel and bioethanol. The hinterland can actually attract labor intensive industries, including garments, textile, footwear, toys, etc. Because the hinterland has large population base that can actually supply cheap labor, so labor intensive industries are quite suitable for the hinterland. Industries that can serve large consumption market. With its large population size, the hinterland can actually generate large consumption market as well, which would include industries like petrochemicals, agrochemicals. You can understand very well, you can actually make a link between agrochemicals and the agro industries, because there would be agro industries, they would need agrochemicals including fertilizers. Basically farming would need quite some agrochemicals. Recycling, including scrap metal and e-waste. Elsewhere, actually in one of our lectures, we have actually talked about the e-waste opportunity for India that can actually be leveraged to you could say start e-waste recycling plants in the hinterland as well. Similarly, scrap metal, for example, scrap steel plants can come up in the hinterland. Now coming to their actual advantage in terms of the high value handicraft, cottage industry, etc. The hinterland generally they are well known for their, you could say, distinguishing you could say characteristic handicraft, folk art, etc. All of this can be leveraged to actually serve the global market for these kinds of items. Elaborating on these points, the hinterland with its fertile soils, ready consumption market and variety of horticultural produce including agricultural produce creates suitable conditions for developing food processing. Now this is a class of chemicals which are called oleochemicals. Oleochemicals are organic substitute of chemicals. Oleochemicals are organic substitutes of chemicals which are derived from plant oils. They have wide use in high-end cosmetics and green chemistry. You can understand very well that nowadays it has become fashionable mostly to go for the, you could say, plant-based products, and oleochemicals can actually serve this demand for, you could say, plant-based products, which is even considered higher margin, higher value product. Oleochemicals can be a lucrative opportunity for the hinterland. Leveraging, now talking of the reasons, leveraging initiatives like National Biofuel Policy 2018, ethanol blending target, etc. Biofuel production and refining is a remunerative prospect for the hinterland. We would like to add that India has set ethanol blending target, which is actually 25% by the year 2030, but we have actually exceeded the target, and nowadays the target is probably being set at 30% by 2030. So this is actually an encouraging sign for setting up biofuel plants, ethanol plants actually in the hinterland. Now taking a leaf out of our peers' books, it is labor intensive industries like garments and textile, footwear, toys, etc. that create the foundation for wide scale industrialization. We are not naming China here, but we can actually take a leaf out of China's book, where they started with the labor intensive industries including garments, textiles, footwear, toys, etc. And now we are certainly aware that they have graduated to high value, higher margin manufacturing, even cutting edge. The hinterland has inexhaustible supply of labor, almost an inexhaustible supply of labor. Converging these, that is the inexhaustible supply of labor, converging it with schemes like Deen Dayal Upadhyay, Gramin Kausalya Yojana. You are almost certainly aware that DDU GKY is a program for upgrading the skills of the rural youth. This can actually help in finding them jobs in the labor intensive industries, and actually supply these industry with, you could say, labor at competitive rates as well. The hinterland has large consumption market for specific industries like petrochemicals, The hinterland has large consumption market for specific industries like petrochemicals, agrochemicals, including fertilizers as well. Again, this point does not need any explanation because the farming base in the hinterland is quite developed. It is actually quite understandable that it would have quite some demand for agrochemicals, including fertilizers. With infrastructure, what makes it possible to set up these kind of industries is the recent infrastructural push. For an example, the Urja Ganga gas pipeline, New Mundra Panipat crude oil pipeline, etc. All of these pipelines would make it possible for petrochemicals and fertilizer complexes in the hinterland to become more competitive, more viable actually. Recycling units in medium and even large scale. Most of the recycling units would actually come in the small and medium, you could say, categories. These can be set up in the hinterland as there is ready supply of scrap metals and e-waste and so on. You can understand very well, as the hinterland has a large population, there would be many people who would be using, for example, metal products, or for that matter electronics, that would generate quite some e-waste or scrap metal which can be actually reprocessed, and these recycling reprocessing plants can come up in the hinterland. Like most regions of India, the hinterland too has its distinctive handicraft tradition, leveraging modern commerce. For example, the e-commerce channels, ONDC, etc. The craftsmen can access the wider market, even the global market. So actually, we can actually refocus on the handicraft opportunity for India, that can actually command quite some premium among the fashion conscious, and in fact, you could say some people who have quite some folk bend of taste. Actually, their taste is quite folksy. Then the conclusion we are coming to is the hinterland is suitable for agriculture based industries, has large consumer base which can serve many industries including petrochemicals, agrochemicals, etc., and unique art and craft tradition to support diverse industries. So this was on the industries, what industries we would suggest are suitable for industrializing the hinterland. This is all for today. We would bring you another lecture in a few days. As usual, we wish you all the best. Thank you.